Hey, what's going on everybody? Alex with you here again. Thank you for stopping by. So if you've seen my previous video, I've introduced the square off roll-up board. And to my surprise, I've received quite a few views, likes, and comments. And that goes to show you that there's a lot of people out there that have a great interest in these chess computers of various kinds, including the square off, or these smart boards that I myself wasn't really all that aware of. But if you have seen my previous video, you will know that this particular board with the pieces was just sort of an introduction or an unboxing video. And that video has been posted about 9-10 days ago. And in those 10 days, I've had an extensive amount of time testing this board out. I've played over 50 games on this. I know you might say 50 games isn't a whole lot, but I felt like 50 games is quite enough to really understand any of the kinks and problems, or any of the elements that this particular board might present to us. And so basically this is why I'm making this video. I wanted to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about my findings, not only in the physical aspects of the board and the pieces themselves, but also talk a little bit later on about the application, the Square Off app, and how everything fuses together to give you this, Square Off playing experience. So let me just go ahead and start by talking a little bit about the board itself. I don't really think that when it comes to the board, much has changed since my previous video. I like the size of the pieces. I like the size of the board. I've had some people that were a little bit concerned about whether, because this is a roll-up board, so when you start to roll up this heavy edge right around here, people were concerned, there's all this wiring inside of the board, and how many times are you going to roll it up before you could expect the wiring to start, being a little wonky with you. I've had some people that were also suggesting that they would probably consider just leaving the board out, as I myself do kind of agree on that aspect. If you do have space where you could, play the games, then maybe leaving the board out isn't such a bad idea. That's what I've been doing because it's easier that way. It's more convenient. If you're always packing the board up, packing the pieces up, then the next time you come around and you're like, maybe I should play a game, just the thought of having to unpack everything and set everything up may be just enough of a deterrent for you to just go play a game online on your computer or your cell phone. However, if you've got the board all set up already and it's just standing there, let's say in the corner of your room, then you don't really have to think about it. You just come in, you turn it on, you link it to your phone, and presto, you're ready to go. So before I get started with the other elements, I feel like I want to mention that there is a possibility that, and which is a good thing, but I feel like Square Off or Square Off, people who work for Square Off could potentially also be watching the videos that I make on their products, which probably, if I was a company that really wanted to care about the feedback of my customers, that's probably what I would do as well. It's not such a bad thing, but the reason why I'm saying this is that since the previous video, when I kind of told you guys all the little details, there's already been like 2 or 3 updates in the 10 days alone to the app that I've noticed that were doing some kind of bug fixes. And although, I'm pretty sure that the company itself has people that are testing these boards extensively, I wouldn't necessarily completely disregard the possibility of them actually viewing these videos, my videos, and also reading my comments, your comments, and everything, and kind of taking everything into consideration. I mean, if you're going to be a competitive company, you'd probably want to do something along those lines and really try to work out the kinks and the little, the little nuances, issues, what have you, okay? So the more you guys comment on this board, the more likely they're going to work out whatever they can work out if it's within their power. Aside from the fact that maybe not having availability of the actual board being one thing, but most of the minor fixes, perhaps they can take care of for you, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. I mean, as far as the board itself, I find this board to be very much so like pretty much any other roll-up board that you would have. And in my opinion, taking away all the little details, I feel overall that this is quite a nice product. It's a nice bridge between having a physical board with physical pieces in front of you and being able to play against somebody human without having them to be physically present. And that's, I feel like, as close as you're gonna get to playing a real, tangible, like physical game of chess over the board without actually going somewhere, or going to a club or something like that, going to a tournament. You get pretty much, I feel like, in my opinion, you get a very, very good in between. And that's what makes this board so attractive to so many people. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the physical aspects. Some of the things I noticed, some of the minor things. Let's just start off with some of the like the downsides, maybe some of the glitches, potentially some of the things they're going to be working out. Sometimes, not very often, but sometimes, whenever you start the game, whether it's through the Square Off Chess or through chess.com, or I haven't tried Lichess. I've heard some people are saying they're having connectivity issue through Lichess, but I haven't tried Lichess yet. Periodically, very, very infrequently, but I'd probably say one in maybe 15, 20 games, when the game starts, and let's say the opponent is supposed to be moving first, you are supposed to notice that it'll light up the square from where the piece is starting, and then the square will light up where the piece is going. So that's, usually how it is, as we've seen it in the previous video. However, sometimes like they're gonna go, I don't know, E2 to E4 or something like that, and nothing is lighting up. And you're sitting there for a second, and then you consult your phone, and yeah, they moved, and your time has been going for the past 20 seconds. And so it's a little bit of a glitch that I've noticed. It's not really a glitch where it messes up the game, but periodically you do have to reference your phone just to make sure that, like, have they already moved? Especially in a situation where, maybe not in the beginning, not that, not that important, but perhaps if you're playing a very short time game and you're sitting there and you think your opponent has not moved yet, and in fact they've already moved, and for 2 minutes now, your time has been ticking because the board didn't show. When it's just the first time, like a very first opening, it's not that big of a deal, but I would encourage people to keep their phone next to them and reference it periodically. That's what I do. Now, the nice thing about the app itself, which when it comes to the app features, I'll get to those in a second, but I did want to mention this. The nice thing that I noticed in the app is that you could close out of your app while you're playing the game with somebody, and you could close out of that app, not close the app, but just sift through your other apps and have that app in the background, at least with the Android, and you'll still continue playing the game. You can always go back to that app if you wanted to reference something. So you could be browsing the web, you could be on YouTube, you could be doing whatever, and in the background it's still allowing you to play the game, which is kind of a nice feature. So that way your phone isn't like completely locked up by the game, and then you're like, okay. So that is a minor little glitch that I notice every once in a while. In fact, I do have an Android and I have an iOS iPhone, and I did not notice it with the iPhone, so it could potentially just be a glitch on my phone in particular. I haven't tested it with any other phones, but that is one of the things. Like I said, it's a lot, like, it happens very, very infrequently, but it does happen from time to time. If I were to put money to say, would I expect one glitch to happen in an entire game? No, I wouldn't, because it doesn't happen that often. But would I say that I would expect one glitch like that to happen in 10 games? Probably, okay? And like I said, that glitch itself is correctable, meaning you just go ahead and move their piece, and then you move your piece, and everything just continues on, and so it's all fine. But periodically I do see that, okay? Aside from that, the battery life to this particular board is pretty nice. I've charged it a couple of times. I feel like you can, depending on how long your games are, but I've played 15-minute games with 15-second increments, and I've had plenty of battery life to last for 7-8 games without it even telling me that there's an issue. When you're playing the game against somebody, it will show you the battery life percentage of your board, so that way that's a nice thing. So if you're getting to the point where your board is getting low on battery, it will also let you know. So you're not like in the middle of the game, oh no, it didn't tell me and now my board shut down and now I have to go find a cord or whatever, you know. That is a nice feature, okay? This is a great board overall. Like I said, I love this board overall. I'm very pleased with it. There's some things about it that are a little different than playing on the computer, because I play on the computer a lot. I play sometimes on my phone. I really like to play on my MacBook, just because the board's a little bit bigger, and for some reason just that little bit of a bigger size on the board does make a difference for me, and overall it's just a little bit more of a comfortable experience. I don't like to sit on my phone, it's a small phone, you know, what have you. Let's go back to the board. Another thing I've noticed is I'm used to playing 10-minute games. I have a good friend of mine, Larry. He plays 3-minute games, and that's all he does. He plays 3-minute games. I play 10-minute games without, like, 0 increments. So total time cannot exceed 20 minutes. I have gotten used to playing that. For me, that's, yeah, it's fast, and a lot of times I'll lose on time, especially if the players are a little bit more advanced than me. But I mean, what are you gonna do? 10 minutes per person seems to be enough for me for most of the time. Here, I tried playing 10-minute games on this board, and the thing is, I'm not really sure yet to this point, and maybe SquareOff itself can comment, clarify, but can you play on the board, let's say at chess.com, when you have the board, can you play against somebody who's just playing on the computer or on their phone or whatever? I'm not really sure about that, but I have a feeling that I think that you're playing against somebody who also has some kind of a SquareOff product. Like I said, I'm not really sure. But what I did notice is, okay, so the opponent makes a move. It goes into your phone. From your phone, it goes into the system. And even though it happens all fast, there's still a couple of seconds here and there, and it goes into the system, then it lights up, then you have to pick up the opponent's piece, place it where they placed it, or whether, you know, maybe the opponent took your piece or whatever, and then you make your own move. Well, the thing is, when I'm playing on the computer, when the opponent makes a move, I'm ready to make my move. I might already have my mouse on the piece that I'm going to be moving, so things are working a lot quicker. I don't have to mess around picking up the opponent's piece. I don't have to mess around waiting for the board to light up from the signal that it received from the phone. So when I started playing the 10-minute games with 0 increment on this board, I started to feel like I was losing on time a lot more frequently than I do on my computer. 10 minutes for me isn't much, but 10 minutes on the computer seemed to be enough. On this board, I quickly realized that 10 minutes is just not that much, okay? So I did switch to 15 minutes with 15-second increment. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes it doesn't work for me. 10 minutes per side, per player, works pretty well on the computer because I have 2 kids. A lot of times I have to get up, go change a diaper, go give them water, go do this or do that. I cannot devote 40 minutes to a game, because think about it, 15 plus 15-second increments of a 40 move game, that ends up being a total of about maybe 40 minutes, maybe more, 50 minutes, somewhere in that range. So 20 minutes versus 50 minutes, sometimes this gets a little too long. And I did notice this, I would play in the evening and then I have to stop. I don't like stopping to play chess. I know you guys, for those of you who play a lot, if you have to stop and you're interrupted and you have to go do something else, like in the evening, I have to go put my son to sleep, and then sometimes I read him a book. By the time I come back to the game, I might have 1 minute left, and the opponent has 12 minutes left, and there's only so much you can do. You're gonna end up probably losing on time. So I don't like to interrupt my games. I really prefer to finish them if I can. So that's my thing. That's not everybody's thing. Okay. I don't know how many games you guys play on average per day. I probably play somewhere between, I'd say maybe 3 to 6 games per day. It's not, doesn't seem much. If you're a chess player, 3 to 6 games a day is just not that much. But to an outsider, somebody who doesn't play chess, 3 to 6 games per day might seem like quite a lot of games, and they might think that you're like a little too much. But the truth is, sometimes I play those games, and I play those games on the computer, and nobody even knows that I'm playing those games. Or I might be playing a game on my phone. I might be sitting there on the couch, and I might play a game, and that's a very inconspicuous way of getting a game in if you wanted to get a game in. But this is different because this board is set up, and I've run into situations several times now, especially if I'm at home and it's time to put the kids to bed or something, and I'm supposed to be helping out or whatever, and I'll just kind of not have much to do at one particular time, so I sit down and I'll start a game. I'll run into a situation where my wife will drop down and she sees me, and I'm like, hey, and then I'm like, she can see I'm actually playing a game of chess, and she's like, it's time to put the kids down. And she knows that I'm playing chess. Whereas if I'm sitting there on my computer or something, and it's like, she's like, are you ready to put the kids down? Yeah, I'm ready to put the kids down. She doesn't know if I'm playing a game, even though I might be playing a game. So, like I said, it's not really all that relevant to a lot of people, but it is something that, that I've come to realize, that if you have a full-on chessboard, you can't really hide it. Or, even if, like, for example, because you can take this to the park with you or something. That might be nice, especially with, like, spring and summer coming around here shortly. You could take this board to the park, and you're going to set up and play it. And you're going to look kind of weird. Whereas if you show up to the park with your cell phone, and you're sitting there playing a game on your cell phone, nobody really even knows what you're doing. You're probably just checking Facebook or whatever. I mean, nobody's gonna bat an eye, but if you set up this nice looking full board, for one, if people are from an outside view, they'll be like, that guy's weird because he looks like he's playing by himself. And two, just the chessboard itself is gonna attract some attention. Now, interestingly enough, when I was younger, I did do that a couple of times. I would go to the park and just set up a chessboard, and surprisingly, you'd get some looks, but then you'd get some random people that will just walk up to you and be like, you want to play a game? Then you'd just be like, sit down. It was just a sort of unspoken rule, but it was kind of funny. I remember there were a couple of instances like that. But yeah, it's an inconspicuous, like people know that you're playing when you have the board. Another like minor little detail about playing on this board is I don't reference my cell phone that often when I'm actually playing the game, because for the most part, 95% of the time, I don't need to be referencing my phone. In fact, I can turn my phone off and put it in my pocket. And unless I have an issue with feeling like the person has already moved, but they just never lit up the squares for me, for the most part, I don't take out my phone until I'm done with the game. But one of the things that I don't know is I don't know how much time I got left, and I don't know how much time the opponent has left when I'm playing and I'm not, referencing my phone. If you reference your phone, you'll be able to see like, oh, okay, you have 5 minutes left, they have 8 minutes left, that's everything is fine and dandy. But if they ever were to do like an updated version 2.0 of this board, it probably would be nice to have like a little tiny little screen on each side that would give you, I don't know, maybe the name of your opponent, their rating, and like how much time they have left or something like that. Like a little tiny LCD. I don't know. I know it's a lot to ask, but it would be a nice feature. That way you could definitely have the time thing. So you would at least have that idea. So you wouldn't even need to like reference your phone. Okay. What else did I notice about this particular board? There's Overall, minimal glitches to what I've noticed, really not much. Periodically, like, so here's the thing. When I learn how to take the opponent's pieces, first I pick up the opponent's piece, then I pick up my piece. And everybody has a different strategy of how they do it. Then I take my piece, I put it on the spot where the opponent's piece was, but I mean, we all play chess, so we know how to do this. And then I put this down. In a normal non-square off situation, you could take your piece first and you could put it into the opponent's piece. The opponent's piece drops or something like that, and there you have it. You could have different ways. You could pick up your piece, you could have a swapping motion, then you can pick up the opponent's piece this way and do it. There's the reason why I'm telling you guys this is because sometimes the board's a little finicky if the opponent's piece gets knocked over or if the adjacent piece gets knocked over and you're like, oh, adjust, you know, sometimes it'll act a little funny afterwards. That's one of the things I noticed is that there were a couple of times where I was playing the game and I accidentally knocked into the other pieces. That's why it's so important for you to really have a good method of exchange that will not allow you to accidentally push any of your pieces or their pieces because it could mess up the game. Similarly, if my daughter or my son comes over and they're like, "Hey, Daddy, what you doing?" And then I'm in the middle of the game and they're like, "Oh, look at this rook," and I'm like, "No, don't touch the rook." Because if you pick up the piece or something and it's the opponent's move or whatever, it could mess up the game again. If it was your move and they picked up your rook, well, you might end up having to move that rook. So, so that's just that, okay? Another thing is that sometimes I like to have the board and my little table facing like the wall or the corner or something. So when I do random, assignment through chess.com is random. You can do random. When you're playing through square off, I did not see the option of doing random, but we'll get to that in just a second. But let's say you're playing chess.com and you click I'd like to play. They found somebody and you have the light pieces facing you, dark pieces facing the wall, and all of a sudden you're the dark pieces. So you can pick up the table, or what I do is I gently start to move the pieces like this, because what it is now the game has officially started. In fact, they've already made their first move. And I have to gently kind of move the board around like this. But I have to do it in such a way as not to jar the pieces, because sometimes you can jar the pieces a little bit, and then what ends up happening is it'll knock a couple of pieces out of their squares, and that could be enough to really set the game off. So meaning like it could confuse the board a little bit, and then you might have a hard time making your move, because then the board sometimes could get confused and then it thinks that something happened, but it doesn't know how to correct it exactly. It'll show you that you need to move the pieces back, and most of the time once you put the pieces back, it seems to be fine, but sometimes it's a little bit finicky. It's like we have this vacuum cleaner in the kitchen, the automated robot one, the iRobot or whatever vacuum. It'll clean up everything fine unless it gets something in it and you have to pick it up and see if it sucked something up like a crown or something. You're trying to take it out, then you put it back on the ground, it gets wonky because it's like, what am I supposed to do? And then it could glitch. So similar to this situation, it'll operate just fine unless you start doing something unusual to it, okay? So that's another thing. I try to be very careful when I'm moving. Maybe if you have this sitting somewhere out, you could have two chairs so that, oh, I'm playing dark this time. You could sit on the side where the dark, so you don't have to even move the board around, okay? So that's pretty much it when it comes to what I wanted to talk about with regards to the actual board. Other than that, this board is pretty much like a normal chess board overall, quite nice, okay? So let's quickly move on and talk a little bit about the app features. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I feel like there's a possibility that Square Off is watching these videos too and taking into account everything that we kind of talk about, and really trying to streamline their product and really trying to improve it in any way they can, which, like I said, that's great if they are trying to do that. But due to the updates, when we saw the video that I made previously, I've had a really tough time finding an opponent on chess.com. Now I don't really have that problem anymore. Initially, when I was playing the games, one of the things that I've noticed is so here's the thing. When you're playing on the computer, and let's say you go to chess.com, chess.com has like millions of players. And at every single moment, there's thousands of players with a rating that's pretty close to yours. So that way, you know, when you're starting a game, you're going to start with somebody that's going to be very similar rating to you. So difficulty-wise, they're probably going to be somewhere in the same ballpark, probably, unless they played chess before and they're coming in and they're doing a new profile, but that's a whole different matter. The thing is, you kind of know what to expect because you've reached a certain level of proficiency in chess and you're playing against people of the same difficulty level as you are, same experience. You know that, hey, if I try harder, I might win. If I don't try, I might lose. So you're kind of in the same ballpark. Now, sometimes what I've noticed is, especially if you play through the Square Off app, every once in a while, you'll get an opponent that is a lot stronger than you are by maybe 200 points or so. And then one of the things about the app itself that may be something that they could fix, or whenever you start the game, whether it's through chess.com or Square Off, when you initially start the game on the phone, it'll say you're playing against so-and-so, and they don't really give you the rating. And some people might argue, well, the rating is irrelevant. Just play the board. Play the game in front of you. But no, the rating is relevant. I mean, if they're rated 1100 or 800 or 600 and they're making some kind of an interesting opening that might be unusual, you're thinking, I don't know how what's the rating of this player is, because if they're really advanced, you know, they're 16, 17, 1800 and they're making that opening, you better watch out. So it tells me, should I play defensively or should I just take all my pieces out and go for the mate? How am I supposed to play if I don't really even know the rating? So I would definitely like the idea of being able to know as soon as I start playing what the rating of the opponent is, you know. So it'll kind of give me a better idea as far as, you know, not only how careful I have to play, but also what should my strategy be, you know. So that's one of the things you don't get to know, even when you're playing at chess.com. When you play the chess.com, I've noticed that I've played some people and then I can go back through like the computer to chess.com and go in and look, and it'll actually register those games. And you can actually review the game, you know, because it registers it the same way that you would if you played the game on the computer, all the moves and everything. But at that point, you will be able to see the rating. And I've seen that in some situations when I was like, wow, that game was really hard. And I kept losing. I would play on these boards and I was like, what's going on? Why am I playing? Well, what's going on? Like, you know, when you start playing against somebody and all the moves that they're doing, and you feel like all your pieces are kind of stuck to your side. You can't even take out any single piece and everything's sort of like, you know, that player is probably a little more advanced than you are. So I've had to play a lot of those games. They're not fun because you really do feel constricted. You're like, I don't know what to do. Like I said, you don't really know the opponent's rating. Maybe you will never know it if you play it, but some of the games can be pretty challenging. If you're playing against somebody who also has this board, you also have to take into account that when you're playing against somebody online through like your computer, you can play a lot of people who are new to chess, because I mean, what does it take to log in and create a profile on chess.com? It doesn't cost you anything. But when people actually buy these, $200-300 Square Off boards, then there's a possibility that, and I'm not trying to classify anybody or anything, but a lot of people who buy these boards for themselves might already have some chess experience, possibly, you know. It's just more likely you're going to encounter people who are absolutely new to chess if you're just logging in through chess.com, because it's so much easier to just create a profile there. And that's kind of what I've noticed is that, for one, people do play a little bit more seriously when they have to set up the board, take out the board, set up the pieces, and they've got the board. They are likely to play like they're playing in a real tournament, so people don't make as many mistakes as they would online. Because then they also have to realize that, well, if I play a bunch of blunders in the beginning and the game's only 10 moves long, I would have to reset my pieces. So no, let's be careful. Let's just play a full, 40 move game or whatever. So people do play sometimes a little bit more seriously. Okay. What else have I noticed? Yeah, so there's no more real issues with chess.com. That's one of the things we had talked a little bit about in the previous video, that I've had issues logging in, and I kept sitting there and sitting there and sitting there, and I guess they fixed that problem, because now whenever I'm ready to play, all I have to do is I don't even play through the Square Off app. I just go to, well, I go through the Square Off app, but then I go through to play through chess.com on the Square Off app, and it's fine. I don't have to wait. Most of the time, I don't really have to wait more than 30 seconds to find an opponent. A lot of the people who regularly watch my channel have a great amount of appreciation for physical chess pieces, physical boards, wooden chess pieces, plastic, what have you, but they have an appreciation for being able to play in real life over the board. But at the same time, there's a lot of people out there that all the chess games pretty much that they've ever played were on the computer, on the cell phone, or what have you, and they've never really even been able to play in real life, or just never were interested. And I do have to say that being able to play on a real board regularly it's a different feeling. You might be able to say, well, chess is chess, but yeah, in a situation where you're just staring at a two-dimensional screen and your pieces are two-dimensional, you don't really get that three-dimensional feel, because being able to sit down and view the whole board from many different angles, and really gives you a greater depth, a sort of a greater appreciation. It doesn't necessarily make you stronger player if you're playing over the board, but it does kind of give you a little bit more sort of thinking to do. It's just it feels different. It feels different to be able to play over the board, and but there is always the question of ergonomics. So I have a little kids table that I set up this board, and the kids table is just the right size, just the same size as the board. So when you are setting this particular rollout board somewhere on a table, the question is how low should the table be with regards to your eyes? How many degrees, how far down, will also determine. But I mean that's all stuff that's also the same for any other over the board kind of game. But I'm just kind of letting you guys know that since I've been playing this recently quite a bit, I have come to a realization that if the board is too low, and you're kind of doing this number right here, you might start to get some discomfort right here in the neck, especially if you're playing for a lot of hours. If the board is too high, you might not be able to see the entire board the way you want to see it, because that's kind of sitting like that. But I'm sitting on a pretty high chair, so I'm having to sort of tilt over like this and sit there. And I have noticed, especially in the mornings when I'm a little stiff, that my back starts to ache a little bit because I'm doing all this bending over the board. That is probably not something that we usually encounter when we're playing on the computer or a cell phone, because when you're playing on the computer, you're just simply sitting there on your bed or whatever, like this. You're just sitting there, you're making your moves. But I mean, playing on the computer comes with its own set of disadvantages. You don't have the distance between the pupil of your eye and the screen stays static. So the muscles that are responsible for focusing on different distances, they don't ever move around. So then those muscles are starting to weaken, and then your eyesight can go bad potentially. Whereas, if you're playing a real board situation, you're focusing first over there, then you're focusing over here. You know, your eye is always moving around. So like I said, just some of the things are ergonomics are really important for when you're playing chess. It might not seem like it's that big of a deal, but you know, whether you're playing on the square off, whether you're playing in regular tournaments, getting up, stretching periodically, walking around, moving your head. I've been doing this quite a lot, but then I do this in dentistry too, because you know, over the years of doing dentistry, you come to realize that your posture and your ergonomics is just so important for overall your spinal health and so many things, so but I'd like to introduce that concept just for people that you really would want to, you know, take that into consideration. Even though I've been playing a lot more games recently with this board, and I feel really like, even though with all the little details that I've mentioned to you guys, overall the board is spectacular. It kind of reminds you of, like, you know, when you were a kid and you had a birthday party or whatever, and all these people, they brought you these gifts, and you open up one gift and it's a, you know, a radio controlled car, and you're like, whoa, cool, I wanted one. And then you open another one and it's you know, it's maybe some kind of a jumping jack thing or whatever, you know, another toy here, another toy there, and then some rich uncle or whatever, you open up his gift and it's a game console, and you're like, oh. And all of a sudden, like 3 days later, you're still playing the game console and none of the other toys matter. That's kind of how it felt since I've opened up this board. It's been kind of like my brain's been in a fog. In fact, I've been kind of playing worse recently. Maybe it's because I've been playing way too many games against people that were rated higher than me, and I've just been having to think a lot. And as a result, I've been losing points left and right everywhere, but I'm okay with it. Like, points don't really matter. Like I've mentioned to you guys before, you know, it's just play more chess games. It's so fun, so fun. Just focus on the fact that you're thinking. Focus on the fact that you're getting the opportunity to enjoy this wonderful game, and that this game exists in our life, and it allows us to, you know, spend our time in this way. Hopefully you guys have liked this video. I didn't want it to make it too long, but I mean, it usually ends up being a little bit longer than I like. Let me know in the comments below if you were able to get yourself a board like this, and let me know what you think. And also be sure to, if you have any comments or any suggestions or anything, you know, comment, let me know in the comments below, okay? Well, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video, okay? Bye-bye.